If you have a hitch on your Ford Flex and you plan on towing a trailer, something that you're going to need to pick up is 4-pole trailer wiring. And this is going to give you the basic light functions on your trailer to keep you safe and legal. And those are going to include running lights, turn signals, and brake lights. Now, if you're worried about having to be a wiring expert to get this installed, that's not the case today. It really does use OEM-style plugs that go into your taillights, and then you just route a power wire up to the battery for 12 volt. So you are going to spend a little bit of time underneath your vehicle to get it installed, but overall this will be something that's going to be required if you are planning on pulling the trailer. Now, the cool thing about this is it's module protected and it's inline fuse protected. So if you have a trailer that might have faulty wiring, you don't have to worry about that going back and damaging any of your factory electronics on your vehicle. So it's all protected, yet it uses OEM-style plugs to snap in between your taillights to get those functions. So it is custom designed for this vehicle with those plugs. If you watch this and decide this is more than you're wanting to tackle on your own, you can get this installed by using our dealer locator to find someone close to you that can install it for you. With that being said, let's hop right into it. We're going to grab an 8mm socket and we're going to get our taillights removed. With the hatch open, you can find the 2 screws located here on the plastic. We'll take these out. And to get the taillight removed, what I like to do is just kind of wiggle this back and forth. That's going to loosen up those alignment tabs. And if it's fighting you, you can see exactly where those alignment tabs are. You can use a plastic trim tool to kind of pry this out, but you want to be careful that you're not putting too much stress on the edge. It can chip taillights pretty easily, but a lot of times you just kind of pull on it, give it a backwards pull, and you'll be good to go. So what we'll do is get this unplugged. We'll just push on this tab, get this separated. And we'll just set the taillight aside for now. We'll grab our harness and make our first connection. Well, as you can see right away, it's identical, so this just tees in between the two. So we have that first connection made. This is going to go into our taillight. And if you look down, you can see some daylight through there. This is where we're going to be passing a decent amount of stuff, and that way we can get over to the passenger side. But before we do that, we also want to make some of the other connections to make it easier on ourselves. So what I recommend doing is getting the black wire and the spool of black wire, and we'll make this connection. That way we can pass that down and start running it up. But something that's not included in the kit and something I recommend is going to be a heat shrink butt connector. So to get this attached, you just use a butt connector and it's going to be fine, but anything that's exposed to weather or even condensation can get into that connection and break it down. The heat treat ones are really nice because once it's crimped down, you heat it up, it'll seal around, creating a watertight seal, really prolonging the lifespan of that connection. Stripping back our power wire, just maybe 1/2 inch or 1/4 of an inch is generally fine. Give these a quick twist. Here's that heat shrink butt connector. We have them available here at eTrailer. You can pick them up. And you're only going to need, I believe, 2 total. So if you wanted to get those, you can absolutely do that. And with these crimped down, I'll just take my heat gun and get that shrunk. Now to get this passed through, there's a kind of a carpeted underbody panel that we'll be able to pull back. But what I did was I taped up our passenger side wire, our power wire, as well as our 4-pole. That way we can get all of them pulled through at once. And where you're going to want to pass it down, kind of go towards the rear bumper. And then when we're underneath, I'll show you where I pull back to get this pulled through. So pulling these through, like I mentioned, just to the left of the exhaust, you just pull this back. There's like a heat shield, and this is going to give you enough to pull this up. So just get some of it pulled out, and then we can kind of start to guide some of this in. Now, obviously, we're going to have excess of the black power wire. So once these are pulled through, you can get the tape taken off and then pull the individual wires up until we get this to a point where most of our wires are passed down. We don't have a ton of excess. So with those passed down, it should look something like this. We want to get our module attached to where it's not going to be rattling around. We want to make sure that it's going to last as long as possible. And I'd recommend putting the wires on the bottom side so it doesn't pool up. This is filled with an epoxy, so theoretically it should never have issues, but putting it like this means water's never going to really pool up. And this is a pretty open taillight pocket, so I'm just going to clean a spot here so we get nice adhesion. And I'll use the double-sided tape that's included with our wiring. And we can stick it down here. Just make sure that it's going to be far enough down to where the taillight can clear. We're not going to have any issues with it feeding back on. So I'll just slide this down right here. That should be good. We'll press that. That way we know it's going to stick. And then make sure that you have that white ground wire, because we're going to get this attached just using a self-tapping screw. There's no factory grounds here for me to attach it. So this will be a nice spot. It's flat, and we'll grab our self-tapper and get this mounted up. And with your self-tapper, you can do a small pilot hole that's smaller than threads, or you can really just send it in. So with these, start it, and once it starts to get drilled through, just give it a few bumps, because you can, if you continuously go, it'll strip out all of those threads and make it not very secure. We're just going to snug it down enough to where this ring terminal isn't able to free spin. So a little bump like that, and that is perfect. So at this point, we can get our driver's side taillight put back in place, and then we'll head back under and route the rest of our wires. Now is also a time, if you haven't taken out your passenger taillight, you can absolutely go ahead and do that. So now what we'll do is grab the green passenger side wire and our 4-pole, and I'm going to loop this up. Make sure you're over the exhaust, not wrapped around it. And there is kind of a tow hook that's a little bit higher by the exhaust hanger, and I'll probably end up zip tying this up to make sure that it's not going to touch the exhaust. That's something obviously we want to protect. But the rest of the wire, we're just going to route up. You can use the hitch to zip tie this up, or really anything on the back side of the fascia to make sure that this is going to be nice and hidden. The 4-pole, once you kind of get it to a point where you have a little bit of a length, that's about right where you want to hook up to a trailer, you can zip tie this up and use the dust cap to clamp this on. That's not a bad spot. You can also get a bracket here at eTrailer to be able to mount that. It's really up to you. And then we'll get the green all plugged in. A lot of times with the green one, what I'll do is I'll run it over, get it plugged in, and then pull the slack back, zip tie it all up. And that's what I'm going to do. I'll get this all set up, and then I'll show you how it looks. So all the excess, I just kind of loomed back and forth and zip tied that. I ran my 4-pole wire down here. I am going to put some wire loom on. That's just going to clean it up so it doesn't have all the colored wires. It's just going to look a little cleaner. And then from here, I routed our green one over, and there's not a whole lot of great places to keep this up away from the exhaust tip. So at the very top of the exhaust hanger, I just zip tied that up, and that should keep it out of the way. So I'll get the wire loom attached on our 4-pole end, and all that's going to do is leave us with our power wire running to the battery. So I'll get this routed up. The battery on our vehicle is located on the driver's side. So as we go down, we're going to try to avoid anything moving, anything that can be hot or pinch or chafe the wires. And we may need to use a pull wire technique to get this up into the engine bay. So I'll get it all routed and then show you the path that I took. I'd say this is probably going to be just the most difficult part of the installation, because you're going to be under the vehicle for a little bit. So if you need to, you might be able to get a creeper under here to route it. You may have to raise the side of the vehicle up. But the path I took, pretty quickly out here, we got some heat wrap right above the muffler. I just zip tied our power wire to that before making our way over the rear cross member. That's going to keep it away from a lot of that suspension moving. And then when you get to the fuel tank, there's a large wire loom. You can zip tie that up, and our wire just runs along this area. And I followed along till about here and zip tied before making my way to these, just because this is going to be our parking brake cable. I don't really want to mess with any of that, and it stops here. So on these, they're hard lines. Don't zip them too hard. I was going to try to use the bracket to really zip tie it up. I don't like to have them on hard lines like this, but I think it's going to be our best option. And then zip tied it here. Now up top, I passed our airline tube down. So again, whatever you have necessary to pass it to where you can tape it all up is going to be good. So I'll get this taped up, and then we can pull it up and get the rest of it attached to our battery. So with our pull wire, I'll just get our power wire pulled up, and take your time here. There's nothing worse than getting it halfway pulled up only to have to re-thread it through. So I'm going to pull up all the excess, make sure we don't have any slack hanging down. And our fuse holder, we can attach either way, it doesn't matter. It is pre-stripped, you can just peel that back a little if you want to. I'm going to strip mine back just a little bit more so there's a little bit more bite in that butt connector. And once you are attaching this, or as you're attaching it, it shouldn't have the fuse in. It should be loose in the packaging. Make sure that the fuse is not in, that way it's not sending power through intermittently. We'll wait till it's all hooked up properly. So on the other side of our fuse holder here, we're going to get our ring terminal attached. And we got a few different spots that we can pick to attach to the battery. It looks to be that all of them are a 10mm socket. So wherever you choose to mount this up, I'm going to probably put mine right here and zip tie up the extra wires, but first I'll make sure to shrink down my butt connector. So I got this tightened down. I zip tied this up, just looping around the extra wire. And with this spot, I think this will work out really well. There's an opening, so that allows us to get this in place without having to do any trimming. And at this point, we'll put our fuse in our fuse holder and cap that up. And we've officially installed our 4-pole wiring on our Ford Flex. But before we, just call it good, we need to test to make sure that it's working properly. That way you're not just plugging in a trailer and not having those functions work. So if you have your trailer handy, I would recommend plugging it in, running through the light signals on the vehicle, and making sure that they're corresponding to the taillights. I have a 4-pole tester. I'll be putting in our 4-pole, but we're going to check and make sure that these are working. When you run through the signals, make sure that you go through all of them to make sure that they're properly working. So that's going to include our running lights, our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and also our brakes. Once you've tested to make sure that all of your lights are working properly, you can either hook up to your trailer and hit the road, and you'll have all those light functions working, or you can just simply cap this onto your safety chain loop for the next time you are ready to tow. Either way, that's going to do it for a look and installation of the Curt 4-pole trailer wiring harness on a 2017 Ford Flex.